Welcome. We are now here live at the Inquisitive Analyst. I have a fabulous guest for you to listen to today. Essentially, my guest is this really highly skilled technical analyst. Well, currently he is, but he started his career as a university instructor. Then he moved to a technical writing role, then into content management. And he has a really strong foundation in instructional design and educational psychology. He specializes in creating these user-friendly and e-learning platforms. He spends time refining AI prompts, and he manages large-scale data analyst projects and technical analyst projects. So his career reflects this commitment to what he calls making complex information accessible and impactful. So please help me welcome to today's show, all the way from Ontario, Canada, Kevin Verbeek. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for having me, Marcus.
Well, it's fabulous having you with us today. Now, let's begin, because you've had this varied career, and can you describe? Let me start with describing your journey from education. You were this educational instructor, and you went into technical writing. You went to become an AI developer, to a senior technical analyst. So how did you transition into each of these jobs?
Yeah, well, I was in education. I started my career in 2010. Don't need to do the math. And so I started as a special education teacher. And from there, I received opportunities and worked my way up to be in a behavior consultation role for schools. And so a lot of things, for those in the audience that are familiar with what you do as a technical analyst, there is a lot of working back and forth with clients and different types of paperwork, documentation. And so there were a lot of parallels in that work. But obviously, it's a totally different field. I have my Master of Education. I have a history degree, not the traditional resume that one considers when they think of Senior Technical Analyst. At around 2020, I wanted to switch into something that was a little more flexible. Teaching's great, but you do not get to choose your days off. You get enough, but they're all on days where everybody else, and you get one day off per year. You can't really travel. Now I'm able to work on a much more personally defined schedule, and I can work from anywhere. I work from home, wherever home is. And so I looked at my resume, and actually this is where I met you, Marcus. Teachers are often friends with too many other teachers, but I joined a club called Toastmasters, where I met lots of different people, varied individuals, yourself being one of them, and suggested maybe business and business analysis, technical writing, that could be kind of in my future. And I think this is really important for anybody who wants to do a career transition mid-career. I'm not saying midlife, mid-career. And that's because I had to take a look at my resume and say, okay, if I wanted to be a technical writer, what in my resume counts as experience in a totally different field? I had to work with clients. I had to work with a lot of writing, documentation. I did a thesis when I did my master's, so I had to write under specific rules and detailed steps and guidelines and following other structures. By looking at my resume in a new way, emphasizing the parts that were more relevant to the future career path that I wanted, I was able to guide and get into that world. And a lot of it is networking and connections. Had I not been part of Toastmasters, had I not met those other people, had I not been willing to kind of put myself out there, those opportunities would not have arisen. Therefore, I found for me, I was able to pivot from education and start to build a resume towards technical analysis by taking my current resume and adapting that experience for the new role. From there, I worked for a company. I started my own. I self-incorporated, so I have my own business in Ontario. It's number that I don't remember, Ontario Inc. And I started freelancing, working for various companies. Worked for oil and gas company. Did some work through learning management software there. Also, in education, there's a lot of acronyms. And so I had to learn a whole new alphabet soup. And so that's part of my skill set now. I have 2 sets of acronyms, LMS software. And I then use that skill set. I've moved into working freelance for Outlier, which has contracts with artificial intelligence companies. And that's very much independent. And then from there, I was able to take my resume and move into. I tried various other roles, but I ended up getting a position with Utah Tech Labs, which I'm part of their globally distributed remote team. And I am a senior technical analyst. And that's kind of the journey. And it's really just chopping that tree one step at a time, getting a little bit better of a resume than you had before, and one that's more geared towards it. Seeing those opportunities and being able to communicate to anybody, specifically potential clients and contractors that you can work for, why it is that you are qualified for this job, even if you've done a totally different job, and really believing that for yourself.
The fascinating thing I find about you is we talked a bit here and there about data analysis, and you went out on your own. You took a number of courses through Google about Google Analytics, and you wanted to play with Power BI. Now, Power BI, instead of paying for it, you got some free version, and then you had to kind of pay for it after a while. So you went to this other version. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it works with Google, and it works just like Power BI. Was Lookup or something like that?
I did a course through Coursera,
right?
Which, yeah, no, that's all good. And so I did the data analysis course through Coursera, but the good thing I really liked about the BA Blocks course that I took, as well as some of the data analysis work I did with Coursera, was that it was really practical. It was really, I was ready to start working after I took it, and it took what seemed like really foreign and like unreachable concepts and turned them into just everyday language that we can have a conversation about. For those in the audience who might be thinking about being a technical analyst or going into business analysis, a lot of it, in my view, is learning a structure that you have the ability to understand. It's not impossibly technical. It's just you haven't learned it yet. And there's a lot of philosophy and theory, and that's great. But ultimately, you need to know what the acronyms mean, what a storyboard is, what a wireframe is, and what a scoping call is. And once you know that, then you can take the skills that you probably have in other parts of your life and apply it to that structure. And what's great was that it gave me something that I could put on my LinkedIn profile, add to my resume, and really give that academic credibility and show personal investment in my own journey in learning.
But you also have a good interest in technology to begin with. It's something you tinker with. So I think that made it probably maybe a bit easier for you to digest the technical content, the data analysis side of it, the Power BI side of it, probably.
Oh, totally. Yeah, like I know when I was back in education, I was the person who was frustrated that the paperwork was not well organized. And so one of the things that I did was for example, made a database for counselors to anonymously collect their data. And that sounds really fancy. I made a Google form and I made it into one spreadsheet. And then the main clinical team lead could see everyone's, but they couldn't see each other's, right? And that made it so that they could apply for grants and get funding. And that my former school board was abreast, and now they hired me as a data analyst to take their assessment data and be able to synthesize it from these impossibly just mush spreadsheets and turn it into like how many students of this demographic achieved in this substrand of the diploma exam in Alberta. And so that's really that progression. And so it's important to utilize the contacts and connections and stay curious about where you want to go and what skills you can bring with you. Yeah.
I think that's really cool. You're taking raw data and you're building a story around it, and you're giving an interface, kind of a graphical interface that the end users can easily understand. And I think the education part, the ability to be able to teach people, comes in handy. At least your background in that education comes in very, very handy with data analysis. Cool. So you were an AI developer, tester. You said with an online company. What type of tasks were involved with this AI testing, AI development?
Well, if you work for a company like Outlier, and there are other companies like Aligner that does this, and TELUS, like the phone company, but they have an AI development division. You get assigned projects, and each project is a little bit different, and you're working with different well-known companies, large language model companies. And it'll be interesting to see what DeepSeek does to this type of industry. But hold on, it still exists. And sometimes you need to do writing. And so you'll write something and it'll be correcting, like you have to write kind of a prompt, it'll give you an answer, you have to correct it or check it. Other times you might be doing voice work. So I did some voice acting where I would have to say the same line, but in different ways. And then the model would have to intuit what the different emotions mean. And so it would be like, I just saw my dad the other day. I don't know how many more of these days we have left together, but I'm just trying to make the most of it. I just saw my dad yesterday. I don't know how many more days I've left this, so I'm just making the most of it. Like, it's the same line. And so it's really interesting to be on kind of the cutting edge of what artificial intelligence will be able to do. And frankly, to be deeply familiar with its limitations. And being from Canada, one of the projects that I was in was I had to teach it all things Canada. And so I was like, how many toonies can I buy? Or how many toonies do I need if I wanted to have 40 Timbits with my 2.4 on my Chesterfield? Anyway, so things like that. And so that's a lot of fun. It's very much gig economy work. I always tell people that if they want to go into that, it's a great second job because it's not always consistent. And you might need to wait a little bit till you get a project. But what's interesting about those types of works is they really look at your resume, they look at your experience, and you can even, in some of the cases, just do a challenge exam and you can go into it. And there are language ones. So for people around the world, I know like my girlfriend is from Mexico and she is in Spanish practice as well. So there's different options and opportunities.
Nice. Awesome. So you explained what type of courses you took, how you built up your analysis skills. That's great. Now you're a senior technical analyst. You have much more responsibility and are involved with client discovery, scoping documents, creating storyboards, delivering product pitches. You're collaborating with project managers, sales teams, developers, all stuff like that. So take us through your process for stakeholder elicitation and client discovery sessions. So a quick end-to-end process on stakeholder elicitation.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I do need to make sure that I am not revealing too much about the Utah Tech Lab process, but I can definitely speak in generalities. When we have members who find us, future clients, prospective clients find us, whether that be through social media advertising or by going onto our website, we start off with that initial call, and that could be just to determine readiness, right? Developing an app or software is a very broad process. You could be developing a small app that maybe costs less than $10,000 to all the way to, you're building a native app environment, one for Apple, one for Android, and you want a web app, and it's going to be part of a large management software, and you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Also, you might be a person who just has an idea, and so you just kind of want to explore. Other people might have fully fledged businesses, and this is the third app you've developed, and you're very familiar with the process. And so that first call is just to determine not necessarily the type of client you are at all. It's just to see where you're at and what the best approach for our team would be to support that process. Also, we get some people who are very technically savvy and other people who are just great entrepreneurs with lots of good ideas, and they're coming to us to rely on us for technical expertise. And in the different cases, since so much of our role is to communicate to those prospective clients and while they're clients, it's really important for us to know enough about them to be able to speak. We need to know our audience in order to speak to our audience. We're a globally distributed team, so a little bit about geography is helpful too, even just something as simple as when should we schedule our meetings and time zones. And really just that first part is just understanding, hey, who is this person? And it's always great to see, one of my favorite parts about being a technical analyst is just the variety of backgrounds, from sport to wellness to logistics and supply chain management. Think about all the types of apps and websites that can exist. That is the breadth of the people I meet in this role. And so because people want to build apps and websites about all different things. I get to learn about all different things, whether that be a sport that maybe I haven't heard about before and somebody wants to build an app, or whether that be for an idea for a way people can travel or work or do wellness that I've never really considered before. And so once we have that set up, then we go like a discovery call is just how do we learn about the people and what is their idea? And we take a lot of notes, ask a lot of questions. And then from there, we meet again and we show kind of the scope. Now, different companies do this in different ways, but for those in the audience who don't know what a storyboard is a document that takes an idea. Let's just say I want to build an app for social media sandwich reviews, hypothetically, because, regular apps, people make fun of sandwich reviews. And so I want to build an app for that. And so it's like, okay, do you want your app to be able to have users log in with Facebook and Google? Do you need to spin up your kind of the background through Amazon Web Services, load balancers, all those different types of S3 content, like those where your photos of sandwich is going to be stored? Everything that you just kind of take for granted when it works. And then do you want to have it connect with your camera? And then from there, users can add posts, delete posts, reply to posts, maybe private messaging. What about content moderation? And so you're thinking about every single thing. And in the development process, different companies do it in different ways. Some companies will ask for a payment for the whole app right up front. Others might have it in more staged. Others might do it in kind of small chunks. Regardless of whatever company process is followed, what is the order that it should be built in? Usually kind of that setup is early on, but then what features are of the priority, right? And so there's different ways of that. And then how long does each thing take and how many development hours? Some teams will have people on their staff, developers. Others will have people who they contract the development for, development shops. And some development shops may wait until later to provide wireframes. For those who don't know what wireframes are, they're just pictures of what the hypothetical app might look like using software like Figma to make really pretty designs. And that's a really important thing because oftentimes that's the the prospective client's first time they see their vision come to life. And so that is a really powerful moment where we can showcase our communication. And so every single step of the way, communication, listening, and understanding is so important. You need to know who the client is, what their needs are. Then you need to really, really, really listen to the nuances of that idea. Where do you want to start? Give it a branding. You have to ask good questions. And so I keep a cheat sheet here if I need some extra thoughts and questions. And so, what type of product, like a web app or an Android app or a progressive web app? And you need like a super admin portal for yourself to be able to oversee your process. And then it might be like, how do you plan to monetize? Oftentimes, these are people investing tens of thousands of dollars. Actually, it's almost exclusively that. And so usually there needs to be a monetization strategy for this type of product. And so we need to really think, how do you plan? Do you plan to run ads, a subscription? Do you want to do like an Airbnb model, shave a little bit off of every transaction, some sort of combination? Airbnb is a great example because the people who want to use Airbnb aren't necessarily the ones who will be willing to pay a subscription, but the people who want to post on it might be. And so different types of monetization strategies are at play there. And yeah, do you have a territory do you want to start with? And like I run on the technical question side. Of course, there's sales and there's that implementation side, which is like I love working where I work because I learned that I have a lot to learn when it comes to technology and processes. I have a good foundation, but working with the developers, I get to learn kind of that more technical implementation side. And I'm a kind of an interlocutor, an intermediary between clients and a development team. Mm-hmm.
Super. Now, you also, as a technical analyst, you're building minimal viable products, MVPs. What's
Yeah.
involved quickly in taking a concept and building an MVP from that concept?
Right. Well, an MVP, again, it's important to remember that's a minimum viable product. It's not like the full-fledged thing. And when you open up Uber Eats, for example, that is not an MVP. That is a product that's being built upon built upon built, and really that first version of Uber Eats probably isn't even recognizable to today's version. That first version of the app that is developed, that is usable, is considered that MVP. And it's a good idea for businesses to build something where you want to get feedback from users, whether that be data just about the way they use it, or it can be qualitative feedback based on just surveys, feedback, even Play Store reviews and things like that of potential bugs. And it's obviously less expensive to develop something that has a base where people can use their beta testing and give you feedback before you build out, what an app that frankly most businesses need to have a revenue stream before they can build it out to that extent. And so obviously, depending on the type of development environment and systems you're using, whether you're using Amazon Web Services or something smaller like Heroku, which is not as much cloud-based. It is, but it's just not nearly as much infrastructure. You want to start with that type of development. Or if you are developing a website, obviously there's going to be different spin up there as well. But you start with just the things that we all take for granted when we open an app and it works. The boring stuff, let's be honest, but it's really important for functionality. And so that's why I don't think it's so boring. From there, we think about what pieces are needed to make something function. And so if you were to think about Facebook, okay, so you're opening up Facebook. What would Facebook need to make it work? It would need something to post on. It would need maybe a messaging feature, even though that didn't exist right away, right? It would need a profile page, the wall, the timeline, and maybe something like those, more of a manual version of moderation. And then from there, that's people can start using it and give feedback. And then later you're adding features that are important, but maybe less like basic to that functionality of the app. Groups, more involved messaging, groups, messages, the marketplace. So these are all features that are great and important, but really that minimum viable product is what you need to be able to start that development process. And what in the development process is important to be able to have a usable product to start getting, for a lot of businesses, it's to start getting revenue. And it's also to start getting feedback. Mm-hmm.
Superb. Now you talked about wireframes, and you mentioned how it's a visual demonstration to the client, or maybe even to the developers you're working with. Say, kind of, this is how I visualize, and maybe a web page, or in your example, the login page for Facebook. Yeah, this is a wireframe. And then you talked about storyboards. So what's the value of a storyboard really in your work?
A storyboard is valuable for a few reasons. One, it communicates to prospective clients, and it consolidates for your developers, and just it confirms for yourself that we know what we're making. And it's important when we say we know what we're making, it's like we know what we're doing. So it communicates to prospective clients that we have given great thought to the process here. It usually breaks down how many hours are needed for each development milestone, which is like a big task, and what tasks are kind of in each subgroup of that. And so it helps people understand that we understand what it is that they are wanting. It includes information about what features that are unique to their product that they've thought of. And so it's very important that we understand what kind of API connections might be at play. So that's an app interface integration there. And what types of features and processes and kind of that user flow, which is often communicated through the features of a storyboard. There's other things like key features and documentation, things like that as well. And I know that Utah Tech Labs, we develop IoT products, games, and so they look different based on the type of product that we're developing as well. But they break down and communicate everything that's in a product, and that can then be used and converted into a financial estimate of the cost of the product and the development process. And that's another important feature. If you just receive a bill at a store or a restaurant, it just has a big number on it, you might be like, what's this? But you're like, oh, you're right. I did order 3 margaritas. I understand that. And that's a storyboard to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. I did ask for international, computing with these APIs. Okay. And so it justifies and explains the cost. And it also then, so it's used as a great tool to develop a kind of a cost overview. And again, it is an estimate, and it's also just like it's a menu. It helps prospective clients understand that if they have all these features, which features are the most important now that I have an estimate of development time for these features. It helps us prioritize and in some cases select which features to keep and to maybe remove in the short term because of those development costs.
For the MVP. Superb. Wow, awesome. Well, this has been a fabulous conversation with you, Kevin. I really like how you can take a concept, for example, the example of Facebook that you gave, or even that receipt with the number, with the price on it, and no list of items, no list of those 3 margaritas that you bought, and so on and so forth. So it gives a really simple, entertaining way to get your point across. So thank you.
No, thank you, Marcus, and for everything you do to support people who are in business analysis, transitioning to business analysis. You're a really great mentor, and it's really wonderful to see how you can support everyday people who are interested in this or are already in it and make this a more accessible and familiar business environment for all of us. So thank you very much for this time.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. Now, the most important and last question of the day is, people want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
My website is kverburke.com. So you can always reach out to me there. I have a contact me form. I also am on LinkedIn, and so you can add me there and send me a message. Those are my 2 main ways to get a hold of me on the business side. And my detailed contact information is on my website for those of you who are interested, and a full portfolio. Something I highly recommend you make yourself if you want to transition careers.
I think that's vitally important, is that portfolio. Probably a subject for another live session, but I think portfolios are valuable, highly valuable for data analysts, for technical analysts, for business analysts, because it is that storyboard that explains what you've done in your career for that next job that you're going to be interviewed for.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.
You too. All right. Take care. Ciao now. Bye.
Bye.